Hi everyone, today I have come to discuss the questions for the chapter Life Processes. Let's start with the questions. What are the outside raw materials used by an organism? If you're asked this, your answer should be the outside raw materials should be, what are the raw materials used? They should be oxygen, water, and if you want, it's CO2. Oxygen is required for the breaking down of the larger molecules or the breaking down of the complex food into simpler substances so that it can be utilized by the body through the process of respiration. Water is required for the hydration of the body and also helps in the digestion of the food. So digestion and hydration. Carbon dioxide, it is required by the plants for photosynthesis. Mind you, this is only required by the plants. The other organisms really don't require it. So if you don't want to write, you can omit this point, because oxygen and water are universally required by all organisms as raw materials for any work that they do or for all of their life processes. So these two are universal components or raw materials that are required, but carbon dioxide is only required by the plants, and that too only for the process of photosynthesis. So this, if you want, you can omit. The next question, what process would you like to consider essential for maintaining life? What processes? What processes means you should mention the life processes that we have already studied about. That is nutrition, followed by your respiration, translocation, and excretion are the four important life processes essential for maintaining life. Where do plants get each of the raw materials required for photosynthesis? The raw materials required for photosynthesis are carbon dioxide, water, and sunlight. So carbon dioxide is obtained from the atmosphere by the plants through the stomata, and water is absorbed by the roots of the plants from the soil into which the plant is growing, and sunlight is absorbed by the chlorophyll of the plant. Sunlight is absorbed by the chlorophyll, or sunlight is absorbed in the presence of chlorophyll. Sunlight gets absorbed by the chlorophyll and other green parts of the plant wherever there is presence of chlorophyll, and sunlight is absorbed by chlorophyll or all the green parts of the plant. So that's it for these three questions. Need to understand what are the outside raw materials. They are oxygen and water, used for respiration. Water is used for digestion and hydration. What processes? They are nutrition, respiration, translocation, and excretion. And where do plants get each of the raw material required for photosynthesis? The main raw materials required for photosynthesis are carbon dioxide, water, and sunlight. Carbon dioxide is obtained from the atmosphere, where water is obtained from the soil through the roots of the plants, and sunlight is absorbed by chlorophyll or all of the green plants of the plant, or all of the green parts of the plant. Okay, so these are the three questions and these will be your answers. What is the difference between autotrophs and heterotrophs? When you want to distinguish between autotrophs and heterotrophs, this question should always be seen, or you should first see what is the marks given or allotted for this question. Because if it is a 2 marks question, you should go with only 2 to 3 differences, because there are quite a number of differences. If you have 4 to 5 marks, you should go with 5 to 6 differences, what we know about. Let us just write down or get down what are the differences between autotrophs and heterotrophs. Autotrophs and heterotrophs. First is they prepare their own food. They depend on the producers for their food. They are mostly stationary. They are able to move. They can store light and chemical energy. They cannot store light or chemical energy. Oxygen. So these can be your differences. I have just written it very short. It is prepare their own food. They depend on the producers for their food. Organisms belong to the plant kingdom, and some species of cyanobacteria are also there, which are autotrophs, that is they prepare their own food. They belong to the animal kingdom. They have chloroplasts which help to absorb light energy, and they are devoid of chloroplasts. They are at the base of the food chain, because these plants, and they are at the secondary or tertiary level of food chain. They are mostly stationary. They are able to move. They can store light and chemical energy. They cannot store light or chemical energy, and they give or release oxygen. They never release oxygen. So this can be a basis. See, already I have listed down or jotted down as a sufficient for a 5 marker. If you are given a 5 marks for this question, if you jot this is enough. So next we will move on to, or next we will talk about what is the role of acid in our stomach. When we talk of what is the role of acid, it is the presence of HCl that we talk of, because HCl is the acid that is secreted in our stomach. So what does HCl do? It provides the secretion of HCl in our body. It makes the medium acidic, or the stomach medium it makes acidic. So it helps in killing of bacteria which may be present in the food. It helps in activating an enzyme, pepsinogen, which helps in digestion of proteins. It makes the stomach medium acidic. So it helps in killing of the bacteria if it is present in the food. It helps in activating an enzyme, pepsinogen, which helps in digestion of protein. It helps some stomach medium acidic. This can be your 3 points if you are asked what is the role of acid or what is the role of HCl in our stomach. How is small intestine designed to absorb the digested food? Small intestine has very minute structures. They are called the villi. They are small finger-like projections. They are small finger-like projections which are called the villi, and these finger-like projections help to increase the surface area of the small intestine. These help to increase the surface area, and because the surface area is more, so the more of the food is absorbed. So if you write it, so finger-like projections called villi increase surface area, helps in more absorption of food, helps in more absorption of food, and due to this more absorption of food and absorption of digested food, the blood vessels present takes up the digested food into the bloodstream. So the small intestine design, so it has small finger-like projections or tiny finger-like projections called the villi. These villi increase the surface area and more efficiently food is absorbed. The digested food is absorbed, and they have many, and these end up in blood vessels. This villi, small villi, they end up in many blood vessels. And so these blood vessels are able to take up the digested food, and this digested food finally ends up into the bloodstream. So the next question, how are fats digested in our body and where does the process take place? The next question, what is the role of saliva in digestion? What are the necessary conditions for autotrophic nutrition and what are its byproducts? And what is nutrition? So if we are talking of the fats, we are talking where it is digested in our body. Where does fat get digested? The fats of our body gets digested in the small intestine. The fat reaches the small intestine as a large globules. The small intestine as a large globules. Now what happens? The liver secretes the bile juice which emulsifies the fat, and it is broken down into smaller smaller globules. From the large globules, it is emulsified and broken down into smaller globules. Now after the smaller globules, on these smaller globules, lipase acts on the smaller globules and it is broken down into smaller molecules. So what happens? What are the fat digested? The fat is digested in small intestine. Bile juice from liver emulsifies fat into smaller globules. Bigger globules, smaller globules. Now from here, so bigger globules are there. So bigger globules with the presence of the bile juice secreted from the liver, it emulsifies fat and it is broken down into smaller globules. Here the smaller globules acts on the enzyme lipase, which breaks down into smaller molecules. The role of saliva in the digestion of food, it moistens the food. And saliva secretes an enzyme salivary amylase, which breaks down, which helps in breaking down the complex, food into smaller pieces. Complex food, that is starch. It moistens the food, and saliva secretes an enzyme salivary amylase which helps in breaking down the complex food into smaller pieces of sugar. The next, What are the necessary conditions for autotrophic nutrition and what are its products? The necessary conditions for autotrophic nutrition is presence of sunlight or presence of daylight and presence of chlorophyll. Without these two, it is not possible to carry on the process of photosynthesis. And after the process of photosynthesis, what are its byproducts? The byproducts is oxygen, because oxygen is liberated into the atmosphere. If you are talking of the products, it is the sugar or the carbohydrate that is produced as the final product of photosynthesis. And last, we'll come to this question, that is, what is nutrition? If we take what is nutrition, we have already, first thing that we have discussed, the process by which an organism receives, utilize the food necessary for its survival. It receives, utilizes. It is the process by which an organism receives, and utilizes the food. So what it does, the organism receives the food, it utilizes the food for its survival, growth, and its repair mechanisms. Repair of the worn out cells. This process is known as nutrition. So the nutrition is the process by which an organism receives and utilizes the food for its survival, growth, and its repair of the worn out cells. So this should be a definition of what is nutrition. So the next set of questions that I'll discuss, what are the difference between aerobic and anaerobic respiration? It takes place, aerobic, it takes place aerobic, presence of oxygen, here absence of oxygen, complete breakdown of glucose, incomplete breakdown of glucose, releases maximum amount of energy, releases less energy than that of aerobic respiration. It takes place in all living, in animal, plants, in all animal and plants. It takes place in certain bacteria, yeast, and sometimes in muscle cells. Then glucose is broken down to carbon dioxide and water. Glucose is broken to ethanol and lactic So these can be the basic differences, that is presence of oxygen, absence of oxygen, complete breakdown of glucose. Incomplete breakdown of glucose releases maximum amount of energy, releases less energy, that of aerobic respiration. Takes place in all animals and plants. It takes place in certain bacteria, yeast, and sometimes in the muscle cells. So basically you can write it takes place in all higher organisms. All animals or plants are all higher organisms, and such as bacteria, yeast. Glucose is broken down in carbon dioxide and hydrogen. Glucose is broken down either to ethanol or it is broken to lactic acid. Now, what are the differences between aerobic? What are the different ways in which glucose is oxidized to provide energy? From this and this are very much related questions. If you remember, glucose is first broken into pyruvate, which is a 3-carbon compound in presence of oxygen. Glucose, the pyruvic acid, is broken down into carbon dioxide, water, and energy. And so glucose, oxygen, carbon dioxide, water, energy. In absence of oxygen, when it takes place, it breaks down to lactic acid plus energy in muscles. Absence of O2, it takes place ethanol. It is broken. This happens in your yeast. Ethanol plus CO2 plus energy. This is yeast, and this is called fermentation. So glucose is broken down to carbon dioxide, water, and energy in presence of oxygen. This is aerobic respiration. Glucose in absence of oxygen broken to lactic acid and energy. It happens in muscles or human muscles when there is immediate requirement of energy but oxygen is not available. Then in absence of O2 or absence of oxygen, the breakdown takes place, and glucose in the absence of O2, by the process of fermentation, it is broken down to ethanol, carbon dioxide, and energy. This process, because it releases carbon dioxide, this process is also used many times for making of the bread, so that it gives the carbon dioxide, which makes the bread very fluffy, because the air gets trapped into it because of the release of this carbon dioxide. So these are the 3 ways. So these are the different ways in glucose is oxidized to provide energy. How is oxygen and carbon dioxide transported in human beings? Oxygen is transported with the help of a pigment called hemoglobin. So oxygen combines with hemoglobin, forms oxyhemoglobin, which is then transported to all the parts of the body, whereas carbon dioxide, which is very much soluble in water, it gets dissolved in the blood plasma, and it gets transferred back to the lungs, or it is taken by the blood plasma to the lungs. So oxygen is transported by the process of becoming a compound called oxyhemoglobin, combining of oxygen and hemoglobin, whereas carbon dioxide get dissolved in blood plasma and then it is transferred or transported. So these 3 questions are clear. So we'll go for the other questions. So our next question, how are alveoli designed to maximize the exchange of gases? We know water alveoli, where it is present. Alveoli, they are present in the lungs. So alveoli, they are very thin walled and richly supplied with a network of blood vessels. Now what happens, this alveoli, they facilitate the exchange over a larger surface area, and because they cover a larger surface area, so a more amount of exchange of gases can take place. So they provide a maximized surface area. So what do? They provide a maximized surface area for the exchange of gases as they are So they provide a maximum surface area for the exchange of gases as they are thin-walled and supplied with a network of blood vessels. So this is what they do. What would be the consequences of a deficiency of hemoglobin in our body? So these two questions I'll read together, I'll discuss together because they are very similar questions or they are very much related to each other. If you read the question, you'll get to know. What would be the consequences of a deficiency of hemoglobin in our body? How are lungs designed in human beings to maximize the area of exchange of gases? I'm very sorry, basically this and these are two questions which are a little bit linked together, this and this. How are the lungs designed in here to maximize the area? This is also about the area for the exchange of gases divided into small tubes called the bronchioles. These bronchioles end up into very fine structures called the alveoli, and these alveoli are supplied with a network of blood vessels, and as they are very small in structure, they provide a maximized area or surface area for the exchange of gases. So this helps in maximizing the exchange of gases in the lungs. So this and this have the similar answers. So here they have mentioned about alveoli, here they have not mentioned about alveoli. So here we have to tell that the lungs are being divided into small tube-like structures or small tubes called the bronchioles, and these bronchioles into very fine minute structures called the alveoli, which have been connected or which are connected with a network of blood vessels, which help or which increases the surface area for the diffusion of gases and which helps for the maximizing of the exchange of gases and helps more in for breathing, means taking on of more oxygen. So these are the two answers. And what would be the consequences of a deficiency of hemoglobin in our body? We very well know, or when I have also discussed about oxyhemoglobin, or what is the work of hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is a pigment which is present in the red blood cells or the erythrocytes of the bloods, and the red blood cells are the carrier of oxygen. They are the ones who carry the oxygen for us, and they combine with oxygen. This hemoglobin combine with oxygen to form oxyhemoglobin. So if there is deficiency of the oxygen is not able to combine with it, so the flow of oxygen in our blood decreases, and due to leads to anemia, a deficiency, and all the organs or the body cells, the body parts starts receiving less of oxygen, which leads to a disease called anemia. So these three questions are clear. This would be what are the consequences. So what a deficiency of hemoglobin means: less oxygen to the cells, fatigue, and it would finally lead to a disease called anemia. So these will be the answers for these three questions. So our next set of questions: what are the components of transport system in human beings and what are their functions? So what are the transport system, or what are the components of transport system in human beings? They are the heart, blood, and blood vessels. So what are their functions? The function of the heart is to pump the oxygenated blood from the heart to the different parts of the body, and again take back the deoxygenated blood from different parts of the body and send it to the lungs for their oxygenation. And this whole process of transportation of the oxygenated and the deoxygenated blood is done by the blood and the blood vessels. So I am clear, it is the heart who takes up the oxygenated blood and send it to different parts of the body, and again the deoxygenated blood is brought to the heart, which is again sent into the lungs for oxygenation. And this whole process of taking the oxygenated and deoxygenated blood from different parts of the body to heart is done by the blood and the blood vessels. What are the components of transport system in highly organized plants? In highly organized plants, the components of the transport system are the specialized conducting tissues called the xylem and the phloem, and along with this also two other or they are used in transportation. One is root and the other is stomata. So these two are also important because without these, the xylem or the phloem will not be working. How are water and minerals transported? We did not write what are the components. Their components of transport system are specialized conducting tissues, that is xylem and phloem. Okay, and also roots and stomata, without which you cannot do. How are water and minerals transported in the plants? The plants' water and minerals is transported through the specialized conducting tissues, that is xylem. And how it is done, or how it has been done, that the xylem, the roots takes up ions, and due to this there is more concentration of the ions inside the roots than that inside the soil, or the water concentration, or we can also say the water concentration inside the root, it decreases, while the water concentration inside the soil is higher than that in the roots. So water from the roots or water from the soil enters into the roots, and that water is taken up through the xylem to the leaves for the process of photosynthesis. This is how water and minerals are transported in the plants. So I hope these three questions are clear with you. Describe double circulation of blood in human beings. Why is it necessary? Why it is called double circulation? During the cycle of blood circulation, blood moves into the heart twice. That is, once it moves, the oxygenated blood moves into the blood, and again the deoxygenated blood moves into the heart. So the blood moves into the heart twice, and that's why our blood or circulation system is called a double circulation system. It is necessary to separate out the oxygenated and the deoxygenated blood from each other. That's why a double circulation system is follows, and this circulatory system is more efficient and also helps in maintaining the body temperature. Why is it necessary? It is efficient, that is double circulation, for highly evolved organisms, and also it maintains the body temperature. Now if I talk about the double circulation, how should you draw about it? So this is basically, if you draw the heart, our heart, here is lungs, here is our body, this is bicuspid, tricuspid, this is left ventricle, left atrium, right ventricle, right atrium, comes in here, gets in, it moves in through here, goes out, the body, from the body it comes out, deoxygenated, enters the right ventricle, it moves to the tricuspid, so this is done by, so what is this called? Pulmonary vein. So this carries oxygenated. What is this called? Aorta. What is this called? What is this called? This is called vena cava. And this is called pulmonary artery. This is called the pulmonary artery. This cord is deoxygenated blood. So basically we can divide the full lung. This is the total circulation or the blood circulation that takes place. This is a diagrammatic presentation. If we divide, this part is oxygenated, this part is deoxygenated. Here it enters once the oxygenated blood and again it enters twice the deoxygenated blood. So it is called the double circulation, and this is also a schematic or diagrammatic representation of the view of the circulation or transportation taking place in our human beings. Now the next set of questions: draw the excretory system in human beings and label the organs which perform urine, collects urine, stores urine. So now if we draw the excretory system, so if you draw here, this one is your kidney. Okay, perform and label the which perform urine. Kidney, this is the answer for one, as it performs or it produces the urine. Basically it filters out the nitrogenous waste from the blood. Then is and here one is aorta, one is the pulmonary vein. So this collects the urine. Here this is where it collects the urines. Here collects the urine. So basically here this one is the collects the urine. Ureters, this collects the urine and urinary bladder stores the urine unless it is passed out. So this is an excretory system. Excretory system, you have to label all these things, and kidney is the one organ which performs the process of formation of urine. Here this takes the urine or collects the urine and stores urine. Here urinary bladder stores the urine unless it is passed out. Define excretion, the process by which the metabolic waste from the body are eliminated in living organisms. It is the process by which the metabolic waste from the body is given out or eliminated. The metabolic waste from the body is eliminated. What is the basic filtration unit of kidney? This we all know. What is it? It is the nephron is the basic unit or the basic filtration unit of kidney, and this is where the filtration takes place. There are millions of nephrons present in the kidney. If you want to know how the nephron works, you can go and visit my video on excretion, where I have explained it clearly and very descriptively about how a nephron works. So this is all about the questions that I wanted to discuss with you regarding the chapter life processes. If you have any other questions which you want me to clear it out to you or talk it about to you, then please put it in the comment section. I'll surely get it back to you. And this is all about the chapter life processes. I have discussed all the life processes or the processes which are important, and I've also discussed with the questions pertaining to all the life processes starting from nutrition and ending with excretion. That's it. I will be coming with my next video on the next chapter from NCERT Biology. Thank you. If you like my video, please like, share and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.